So in today's show we're back here at MM with Rich, and we're going to replace the prop shaft on this thing. So when you choose prop shafts, there's a whole host of different prop shafts to talk about. Rich has produced 3 here for us to have a look at. So what have we got here, Rich?
Well, here on our left we've got a standard prop shaft. In the middle we've got a wide angle prop shaft, and over here on the right we have a double cardan prop shaft.
Okay, so most people, if we've not modified it before, will have something like this on their vehicles. Yeah. And for the most part these are pretty reliable, pretty good all-round prop shafts.
Yeah.
When might we run into trouble with these, or when might we say we're not going to replace it with a standard prop shaft?
Well, obviously they'll wear out like other things on the vehicle, and if they're not greased properly they can wear out because of that, just through wear and tear. But one thing that will take a prop shaft out prematurely is if the vehicle is lifted, it's got a suspension lift on it, and then these are working at an angle that they shouldn't be working at, and then they can fail. And then at that point you may want to consider putting an aftermarket prop shaft on it.
Okay, so in terms of when we put in a lift on a vehicle, a standard height, we're never going to have any problems with a standard prop shaft. What sort of lift do we think we can go up to before we say, right, that's not enough?
You should be fine with a 2-inch, up to 2-inch lift with a standard prop shaft. But any more than that, you really should be changing it for something that's made for the job.
Great. So, and something that's made for the job might be this wide angle one we've got in the middle.
Yeah, wide angle one is good for. I mean, this vehicle here's got a 5-inch lift on it, and this is the one that we're going to be fitting to it. We could opt for this one, but because we want more articulation, this one will give that over this one. The double cardan one is more designed for a smoother drive. When you're going, if you're doing a lot of road use and you've got a lifted vehicle, this would be a good choice to go for. But if you just want sure axle drop, then I'd go for the wide angle one.
Okay, you loosely touched on the double cardan there. These double cardan prop shafts, they didn't start life as a modified Defender part, right? No,
it's a factory Discovery TD5 prop shaft, which is fitted to the front of the Discovery TD5, and it was designed for a smoother ride with less vibration in the front prop.
Makes sense. So we spoke about wide angle and standard. What does that actually mean to us when we talk about articulation? But where does that come from? Because they're pretty rigid bits of metal.
Basically, all it means is the amount that this flange will rotate on the end of the prop shaft. If we just put them on the ground in the same manner and lean them back together, you should see that this one will come back further than that one will. Yeah.
So we can see on the standard one, well, the wide angle's sort of dropping back another 2 or 3 inches at the top.
Yeah.
And I guess that's where our lift kits are going to benefit.
Exactly, yeah.
Okay. Right, so that's a decision made then. We're going with the wide angle on this Defender.
Okay.
Right, let's get started.
Cool.
So we've got the Defender up in the air to get the new prop shafts on. Now, Rich, ordinarily, would this be a one-man job, or because we're cheating a bit here, aren't we? We've got Nick up in there who's going to be pressing the brakes and engaging the diff.
Yeah, I mean, you could do it on your own. I mean, if the vehicle's on the floor, it makes life a little bit more difficult because you've got to keep jacking the car up to turn the prop shaft over. Failing that, you could be pushing the car forward, but it means having to keep getting up and getting the handbrake on and off. So 2 people always make life easier. But yeah, you can do it on your own, no problem at all.
Right, well, we've got the vehicle up in the air now, so you can get cracking.
Awesome.
Once you've got the vehicle safely up in the air, we will loosen the 4 nuts and bolts on each flange of the prop shaft. These can be very tight or rusted up, and it really helps to have the correct spanner here. 14mm will do at times, 9/16 is really what we want. Now the fixings are loose, we're using an air spanner to remove the nuts from the transfer box end first. You could continue using either spanners or a socket here.
I'll take the back ones off first because the back ones have got studs, so the nuts can come off there and the prop doesn't drop. So start with the back. I slackened them all off just to start with, so I could use the air tool. Done the backs first, like I said, so that stays where it is. But these are nuts and bolts, so once these come out, obviously that just drops. So I've left one in to make sure it doesn't drop on me. We're just on the last one now, so then when that comes out, I've just got to take that one there just as a safety precaution.
If you're working underneath your vehicle, the front end of the prop shaft dropping could easily break the nose, so take care here.
So that one's out, so take the last one out. Now sometimes they can stick because obviously they're bare metal surfaces, so they can sometimes sort of get welded onto each other, so you sometimes have to give it a tap. In this instance it's not, so it's come off fine. Whether this side will or not is another story. No, it's fine. It's popped off, but you can see that they will go a bit rusty, which is why they kind of stick into the surface. But if you give them a bit of a jar, they usually come off. If you're replacing the prop, obviously you can be a bit more brutal with it. If you're putting it back on, then it's a good idea to perhaps give it a tap with a soft mallet, not the joint, but the flange, and that gently. Obviously not too hard on the flange because there is a bearing in there as well.
Well, that's the prop shaft off, so grab a cup of tea and then we'll get the new prop shaft fitted.
So here's the new prop shaft. When we install it, we make sure that the slider part is at the front of the car, and obviously the fixed part is at the back. But incidentally, the slider part on the rear prop shaft would be the same, but that would be at the front, so the props always face that way with the slider facing forwards.
When placing the new prop shaft in place, the transfer box end goes on first, as it came off. The flange holes are not evenly spaced, so you'll find that they will only go on in the correct orientation. Once the prop shaft's in place, be sure to drop a bolt through one of the holes at the diff end to keep you looking gorgeous. Then refit the nuts and bolts. You should be able to reuse the bolts, but the nylock nuts will want changing each time to ensure that they stay in place. New nuts go on the transfer box end, and we're very nearly there. As mentioned earlier, having a helper here is very useful to engage the diff or handbrake in order to rotate the shaft and getting the fixings in, then locking again to tighten them up sufficiently. Alternatively,
you only actually need to lift one wheel off the ground to do this because you've got 3 diffs in the car. You've got your differentials, obviously front and rear, which most people know about. You've actually got a differential in the transfer box, which means if one wheel is off the ground, the prop will turn. So when you're off-roading and you lose traction with one wheel, people get confused. They think, oh, it's 4-wheel drive, why is one wheel spinning? It's because the power's going through the easiest route, which is through the gearbox, through the differential in the transfer box, through the differential in the front axle or the rear axle, and then through the wheel that's lost traction. And basically diff lock, again, people think it locks the actual differentials, it only locks the centre diff in the transfer box. So power is put to both front and rear wheels all the time. And you can still lose traction then by spinning one wheel on the rear axle and one wheel on the front axle.
as in the removal, using spanners or ratchets, nip the fixings up before using a torque wrench set to 33 Nm. Final lockdown. And that's it, we've successfully replaced the prop shaft. It's all running nicely and we're good to go.